Homelessness is something that we see every day. Many of us walk past it on a daily basis, encounter it. However, it's not something that most of us will have to experience or have experienced. And so going into this project, we really wanted to kind of take a look at what it means to be homeless and kind of how the community deals with it, how the government deals with it, and how the people themselves deal with it. However, through this project, I think our image of homelessness evolved and what it means to be homeless. Maybe it's not something we can fix. Maybe it's something that there's nothing we can do about. We'll never ultimately be able to eliminate it. And the only thing we can do is treat those who are homeless with humanity. I'm Olivia Richard.
I'm Katie Malice.
I'm Kelsey Grega.
I'm Leah Jurians.
And I'm Ben Moffitt.
So after we took the time to do this project, it gave us a lot of time to reflect on some of the misconceptions that we had and some of the things that we learned about homeless people in the Valley. And we were really surprised about some of these things.
A common misconception that I definitely learned through writing my articles and talking with my family is the idea that the homeless people that are out there, they are homeless because of bad decisions on their part, whether it be marijuana, alcohol abuse, or any sort of thing like that. But in the research that I did, in the documentaries that I watched, a lot of these homeless people are homeless because of other things in their lives, financial problems or circumstances that happened with their job, things that a lot of the time were out of their control. And as sad as it is, there is that common misconception that it's because of weed abuse, things like that. And so I definitely learned a lot through this experience, and the fact that, we need to be more aware of how they got there and what's the actual situation was.
Yeah, definitely for me. One thing I learned was, there's a lot of talk about, the homeless, and we have this, image of somebody on the street, destitute. But a lot of people don't consider people who, they work, they just may not make enough money to provide for their family, and so they need to rely on charities and the classification of the working poor as a type of homelessness. And through my videos and my interviews, that was something that really came across, that there's a lot of resources that aren't available to people of the working poor because they're not on the street, they're not destitute, but that they need, such as medical care, health care, dental insurance, and there are a few different organizations that reach out to them, but I don't think that the working poor is something we think of when we think of homeless.
Something I thought was interesting is that most people you talk to will say, oh yeah, we totally need to help the homeless people. Most people won't be like, nah, I don't care about them, we shouldn't help them. But there's a total difference between saying, yeah, we should help them, and actually doing something. And the reality is, I don't think people want to put in any effort to help these people. They're just kind of the forgotten. You see it, it makes you sad, and then you move on. And that's kind of, I think, the biggest problem with writing about this is there's not a lot, there's all these services, but there's not a lot of legislation or anything going on that's actually actively trying to help these people.
And I definitely feel through the fact that people aren't too knowledgeable on what's going on in the homeless community, and I feel that through our project I'm hoping that we can help people to become more aware, and so new things can happen and changes can happen.
And something that I found really interesting when I visited the Andre House with Ben is that a lot of the people I talked to, some of them were in my story, some of them were not, just having a conversation, they sort of just accepted the situation that they were in, and they understood that that's how it had to be. And I asked this man, and I said, well, what could the community be doing more? And he goes, there's nothing. You're never going to solve the homeless problem. That's the thing. His thing was, this is how capitalism works. In order to have a capitalist economy, it's going to have to be built on the poor. And that's something that I found really shocking, because everyone talks we need to, solve homelessness. Well, maybe there really isn't a problem, but what we can do is understand that there are people that need help, and we as individuals have to be decent human beings. So I think that it's just as much as a government problem as it is something that individuals need to take into consideration.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
And related to that, like it was interesting, just trying to report on it, because reporting on it was difficult, because you want to talk to people and get their stories, but you also don't want to feel like you're being exploitative. And a lot of the people that Kelsey and I talked to, they all they wanted was to talk. We one of the conversations that we had with somebody, he said, just come out and sit down on a bench and just talk to people. But then on the other hand, a lot of the coordinators and like the people who work in resource centers and shelters and other places like that, a lot of those people who I've talked to, they don't seem to be quite as receptive because of the exploitation perception, the idea that it's a bunch of J school kids trying to make a difference, like just for themselves, because it's kind of a low-hanging fruit. And it was just kind of difficult to convince people sometimes that we didn't come in here as like crusaders and white knights or whatever. We're just trying, like, we just want to humanize people who have kind of been dehumanized a little bit, and that was difficult to get around.
Yeah.
And that's actually true, because as far as J school kids who visit the Andre House a lot, because Ben and I were definitely not the first people that went there.
Yes.
And it kind of made me feel a little bit guilty,
Mhm.
because I talked to this one gentleman, and he's talking about how angry he was at this one student from Cronkite School came in with this very expensive blazer and pearl necklace and nice clothes, asking him questions and asking them at him. What was the question that she asked him?
I can't remember.
Something about what if the homeless people were like moved to state prisons instead. I don't know. It was a really
Yeah.
stupid
Oh my
question.
gosh.
That's
It was a really, and I'm just imagining
Insensitive.
this because he was just describing this, and I have seen people at the Cronkite School who've kind of put themselves that way. They don't really put on their human cap. They just put on, all right, I'm on a job, I'm a journalist, but you can't really treat it like that, because you can't come up there in your expensive, nice clothes and everything and be professional like you would to meet a city councilman. This is something you have to attack completely differently. You have to be on their level. And you have to, it's very conversational. You can't just be interviewing them. It can't be that formal.
It's like a whole nother style of journalism.
Exactly.
It's
approaching
just being,
this.
you have to approach it as like a human being, because you're dealing with people who are they're in their worst stage, and you don't want to come in very condescending and above them.
Exactly.
And
This isn't about making a reputation for yourself. This isn't about being like, oh, well, if I write this, it'll come off really cool, and then I could do this. It's either you want to make a difference, either you want to do it in a way that benefits them, or you are doing it for yourself. There's really not an in-between there, because it's a line. Like, the second you cross that, where it becomes more about you than their stories, the second it's not about journalism.
And going off of what Kelsey said, but my idea about this at the beginning of the project was homelessness was something that could be changed or fixed, but at the end of it all, that isn't what it is. It can't just be fixed. I think like our end goal and our end mission was we wanted more voices to be heard, and we wanted to learn more about an issue that, at least for me, I wasn't really aware about. I didn't really spend my time doing the research or understanding it. And it's not that it needs to be fixed, it's just that more people have stories to share and they want their voices to be heard. And that's the important part of it, and we can find ways to improve the situation. But like Kelsey was saying, we almost need to have it, in a sense, as bad as that sounds.
Yeah. One thing that really stuck out to me is when I went to go do one of my interviews, it was at a shelter that kind of serves as like a multifaceted resource. Some of the children were really were really, really hesitant to go and like talk to me. At first, I mean, the camera, some of them were really, really scared. And I mean, I had to sit down and I just played with them. And some of the facility directors, they were a little bit surprised by that. And I didn't understand why until they told me that somebody had been there and kind of tried to just shove these children onto the camera and just get in and get out. I mean, I spent 5 hours at this shelter doing something that, like, is only going to be a minute and a half long, but that's because they're human at the end of the day. Like, I'm not trying to just, use them for, what I can get from them, and use their stories and use their misfortunes to my gain. And I feel like that's something that's often not, like, you forget to be human and sensitive to other people, and that's something I really learned during
Definitely
this.
opened my heart a
Yeah,
little bit as a
sure.
journalist.
Yeah.
It's, you kind of learn the difference between separating being a journalist from being a human being. And I think that with stories like this, you can do both.
It's like that silver lining almost.
Yeah, you can't put, what we learn here above what you would do as a normal human being,
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing. It's an ethical thing that everybody struggles with, I think.
Yeah.
And this was a really great experience.
Yeah.
I agree.
I think you can take all the classes you can, and Cronkite can teach us everything they can, but, like, at the end of the day, like, you can't teach someone to be human and be, kind and genuine.
Exactly.
And that's all you need, like, especially in this kind of circumstance.